Natalie sent me the video while I was scrubbing in for surgery at Northbridge University Medical Center in Boston. It lasted 7 seconds. She was crouched on the bathroom floor of her apartment in Atlanta, one eye swollen shut, blood running from the corner of her mouth. A man was pounding on the door behind her. Before the video cut out, she managed to whisper, "Evelyn, don't call me. Please just come get me." I did not race south like some reckless movie heroine. I forwarded the video to the Atlanta police, called the Domestic Violence Center that had helped Natalie file a temporary restraining order, and asked the hospital to remove me from the surgical schedule. The advocate on duty told me Natalie's husband, Grant Miller, had already violated the order by returning to the apartment. Officers were on the way, but no one could promise they would reach her before he hurt her again. Adrian Cole had just finished a 6-hour procedure when I found him outside the operating room. He listened without interrupting, then asked only one question. "Where are the car keys?" Boston to Atlanta was more than 1,000 miles. We drove in shifts for 16 hours, stopping only for gas. While we were on the road, an attorney from the Advocacy Center prepared an emergency protection petition. Police kept trying Natalie's phone. She never answered. By the time we reached the apartment complex, 2 patrol cars were already outside. Grant had locked the front door and was dragging Natalie toward the bedroom. A side door had not fully latched. Adrian forced it open and put himself between Grant and Natalie. I pulled her behind me. Grant swung at Adrian, missed, and came at me instead. I blocked the punch and drove my knee into him hard enough to create distance. It was not revenge. It was self-defense. The officers rushed in seconds later and pinned him to the floor. Half an hour after that, Natalie sat in the back seat of our car wrapped in a coat from the shelter. She looked at the split in Adrian's lip, then at the bruises forming around my wrist, and suddenly laughed. The laugh turned into sobbing. "You two can never break up," she said, wiping her face. "Because if you do, who am I supposed to go with?" Adrian rolled his eyes at her through the rearview mirror. "Evelyn and I are fine. You need to learn how to build a life that doesn't collapse when one person leaves it." None of us knew that 3 months later, Natalie would stand in an airport parking garage and walk toward Adrian. And I would be the one they left behind. Back in Boston, Natalie moved into my apartment temporarily. She had once been a registered nurse, but after moving to Georgia for Grant, she had let her Massachusetts license lapse. 2 years of control, isolation, and violence had left gaps in both her employment record and her confidence. I helped her contact the nursing board, complete her continuing education, and renew her registration. Adrian did one thing. He forwarded her resume to Human Resources at Northbridge. She still went through a formal interview, background check, and orientation before she was hired for the neurosurgical floor. I did not want her to believe she had been handed a job because of who she knew. Being rescued, I told her, was only the first step. A new life began when she learned to stand on her own. I never got to see whether she could. A pediatric neurosurgery research center in Heidelberg invited me to join a 3-month collaborative project. The night before I left, Natalie hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "Don't worry about me," she said. "I'm not the woman who is too afraid to leave her own apartment anymore. Adrian will keep an eye on me too." Adrian stood behind her and squeezed my shoulder. "Go to your research. I have everything here covered." I believed him. 3 months later, I walked out of Logan Airport dragging 2 suitcases and saw a pink bead charm hanging from Adrian's rearview mirror. It was a crooked little fox made from plastic craft beads. Natalie loved making things like that. When her wrist had still been healing, I had spent an entire night on the living room floor helping her finish one. I held up the fox. "Who gave you this?" Adrian looked past me. "A coworker." "Which coworker?" His jaw tightened. "Evelyn, you just got off a flight. Don't start a scene in a parking garage." Something inside me went very still. I hung the charm back where I had found it and said, "Then we're done." The color drained from his face. Natalie stood several yards away, pale and trembling. I turned to her and extended my hand without thinking. "Get your things. We're going home." Even then, I believed that whatever Adrian had done, my oldest friend would still come with me. She did not. Her eyes filled with tears as she walked, one slow step at a time, toward Adrian. The wind tore through the concrete garage, but I could no longer hear it. After a long silence, Adrian reached for her hand. "We wanted to find the right time to tell you," he said. His voice was rough. One night, she got another threat from Grant. She was falling apart. We had both been drinking, and I stayed with her. Then, it happened. "How many times did it happen?" I asked. Natalie's head snapped up. Adrian did not answer. That was answer enough. I had barely eaten during the 10-hour trip from Germany. Black spots appeared at the edge of my vision, and Adrian moved instinctively to catch me. I raised one hand and stopped him. Natalie dug through her purse and pulled out a wrapped butterscotch candy. It was the kind we had shared as children, and the kind she always carried because she knew I sometimes became hypoglycemic. "Evelyn, please eat something. Don't say my name." I picked up my luggage and walked into the crowd alone. By the time I reached my apartment, Natalie had packed. Her slippers still sat by the door. A framed photograph of her and Adrian at a hospital charity event rested on the bookshelf. Inside my suitcase were gingerbread cookies from Germany, a scarf I had chosen for Natalie, and a fountain pen I had spent weeks selecting for Adrian. I put the photograph and every gift into a trash bag. Natalie began crying immediately. Adrian stepped in front of her. "This is my fault. Be angry with me." He sent her downstairs, then closed the door and stood across from me. "I know I'm sorry isn't enough," he said. "The hospital is opening applications for associate project director next month. I can recommend you to the selection committee." For a second, I thought I had misunderstood him. "You think a professional recommendation makes up for this?" "That's not what I mean." He dragged a hand through his hair. "You never let me do anything for you, Evelyn. You solve every problem alone. You refuse my contacts, my resources, my help. If I buy you a gift, you have to buy me something of equal value. You never say you miss me. You never say you're scared." He looked toward the hallway where Natalie had disappeared. "She is different. She needs me." I laughed, though there was nothing funny in the room. "So you betrayed me because I failed to become a woman you could rescue?" His face tightened. "That's not what I said. It is what you did." I opened the door. "Leave." Before he stepped into the hall, he said quietly, "Take care of yourself." The moment the door shut, my knees gave out. I had always believed my strength was one of the things Adrian loved most about me. That night I learned that, to him, my strength had also become an insult. The next morning, I returned to Northbridge University Medical Center. Adrian and I were both pediatric neurosurgeons. He came from one of Boston's most respected medical families. His father, Richard Cole, chaired the board of the Northbridge Health System, but the hospital did not belong to the Coles, and positions were not family favors. At least, that was what Adrian had always claimed to believe. We met in medical school. I beat him by 2 points on our first major exam. He found me beneath an old oak tree on campus, grinning like a boy who had just discovered a worthy opponent. "Evelyn Shaw, you're good," he said. "But next time, I'm beating you." We competed for years: grades, simulation scores, residency placements, research grants. No one at the hospital knew that the two physicians who challenged each other in every meeting had been secretly in love for 7 years. Natalie was the only person who knew. Now she was the person who had torn that secret open. That afternoon, I was checking patients when I noticed the infusion pump in room 11 had been programmed incorrectly. Natalie had shifted a decimal point. The medication was already running. I stopped the infusion, assessed the patient, called the charge nurse and pharmacy, and filed a patient safety report. We caught the mistake early. The patient suffered no lasting harm. Natalie stood beside the bed, white-faced, apologizing over and over. "You are accountable to the patient and the safety committee," I said. "Not to me." The charge nurse removed her from duty pending retraining and review. Adrian arrived after hearing about the incident. Once he saw the patient's stable vitals, he visibly relaxed. "No harm was done," he said. "Retraining is enough. You didn't have to terrify her in front of everyone." I stared at him. It was a medication near miss with the potential for serious injury. Near misses are still reportable. She survived domestic violence. Her concentration is not going to be perfect. Then she should not be responsible for vulnerable patients until she can focus safely. He frowned and placed a hand between Natalie's shoulder blades. During our first year of residency, Adrian had once confronted a colleague who tried to hide a small mistake. I remembered his exact words. The most dangerous thing in medicine is not making an error. It is pretending the error never happened because you want to protect yourself. I repeated the sentence to him. His expression froze. In that instant, I realized the idealistic young man who had once argued beside me about ethics was no longer standing in front of me. Or perhaps his principles had not disappeared. Perhaps he had simply decided that when Principal and Natalie came into conflict, Natalie would win. At the end of my shift, I went to the hospital roof for air. Natalie followed me. Adrian said you come here when you're upset. I turned slowly. The roof had been ours. We competed in public and kissed in the quiet corner beside the service stairwell. He had given her that secret as easily as he had given her his hand. Natalie's eyes were swollen from crying. I know sorry isn't enough, she said. But you can't control who you fall in love with. There are millions of men in the world. Why him? For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she lifted her chin as if I had pushed her into a corner. Because you already have everything. Your career. Your talent. Everyone's respect. You never need anyone. I just wanted someone to hold me when I was afraid. I helped you leave Grant because I wanted you to learn that safety cannot depend on another man. You always stand above everyone and tell them how to live, she snapped. Yes, you helped me. I am grateful. But saving me does not mean I have to spend the rest of my life giving you everything I want. Adrian is not a possession. Then let him choose. She wiped her face. He already did. We're even now. After she left, Adrian appeared in the doorway. He stayed several feet away. When she looks at me, he said, I feel like I am the only thing keeping her from falling apart. You have never looked at me that way. I was silent for a long time. Love may have occupied only 10% of my life. But inside that 10%, Adrian had once occupied everything. The problem was that he did not need my love. He needed my weakness to prove his value. I walked past him and left the roof. The door drifted shut behind me in the wind. I thought I would never return. A week later, Adrian and Natalie announced their relationship openly. They sent coffee and pastries to the entire unit. When a nurse handed me an iced coffee, Adrian automatically said, her stomach can't tolerate that. Give her the hot ginger tea. Natalie's smile faltered. I lifted my own travel mug. Thank you. I brought something. The real danger came that night. I finished a late shift and entered the employee parking structure. My phone warned me that someone was trying to access one of my social media accounts. For several days, I had also felt watched. Before I reached my car, a man stepped out from behind a concrete column. Grant. His restraining order had been made permanent, but while awaiting trial he had violated it, traveled from Georgia to Massachusetts, and found me. A baseball bat hung from his right hand. Evelyn, he said. Long time no see. I backed away and pressed the emergency sequence on my phone. The system would share my location with police and hospital security, then call my first emergency contact. That contact was still Adrian. Grant smiled. Natalie traded up to the board chairman's son. I can't get near her now. But you're the one who came to my home. You're the one who took her away and made me a joke. Police are already on their way. Then let them come. He raised the bat. I ran. My footsteps echoed through the nearly empty garage. I could see the exit sign, but Grant cut me off from the side and drove me toward a dead end. Money, lawyers, settlement terms. We can discuss anything, I said, trying to keep him talking. I don't want anything. He cornered me against the wall. I raised my right arm over my head. For the first time that night, my voice broke. Please don't hurt my hand. I have surgery tomorrow. My patient is 7. She has waited months. If I cannot operate, she may lose her chance. Grant did not hesitate. The bat came down and I heard the bones in my wrist break. The second blow struck my forearm. Pain shot to my shoulder like electricity. I fell and my phone skidded across the concrete. Adrian's name still glowed on the cracked screen. The call rang. And rang. No one answered. Grant lifted the bat again. A security guard shouted from the other end of the garage. My emergency alert had reached the security desk, and the cameras had captured the attack. Grant ran for the exit and collided with the police arriving outside. As paramedics lifted me onto a stretcher, the last thing I saw was the shattered screen of my phone. The call had ended. When I woke, my right wrist and forearm were locked inside a heavy brace. The hand surgeon explained that both the radius and ulna had required fixation. My flexor tendons had been repaired, but the median nerve had suffered a severe crush and laceration injury. I would probably regain enough function for daily life. No one could promise that I would ever recover the microscopic precision pediatric neurosurgery demanded. Natalie was kneeling near the bed, unable to form a complete sentence through her sobbing. Adrian stood by the window, his eyes bloodshot. "That call," he began. "Get out." He stepped toward me. "Evelyn, I didn't know it was Grant. Both of you, please leave." Only when the door closed did I let myself cry. I was not crying because I had lost a man. I was grieving the hand I had trained for more than a decade, the hand that had opened a path to life for children no one else could safely reach. Adrian came every day after that. I never allowed him inside. Once, through the closed door, he said, "If you cannot return to surgery, you can move into administration or teach at the medical school. My father can make sure you have the best position available." I looked at my bandaged hand and felt something deeper than pain. He still did not understand. I had not lost a salary or a title. I had lost the way I had chosen to live my life. That night, I reopened an email from Heidelberg. Professor Anya Weber had invited me to join her center as a visiting clinical researcher and surgical navigation advisor. The position did not require a German medical license or independent operating privileges. I would analyze cases, plan procedures, and help improve navigation technology. I had declined because I wanted to return to Adrian and Northbridge. This time, I typed one sentence. "I accept." The next morning, I underwent another operation to repair the damaged tendons and nerve. I did not fly to Germany immediately. For 6 weeks, I stayed in Boston, attended follow-up appointments, began basic rehabilitation, and met with a trauma therapist. The Heidelberg Center arranged continued therapy and an accessible apartment. I chose a departure date only after my surgeon cleared me for the flight. Before leaving Northbridge, I completed one final responsibility. My 7-year-old patient, Molly, had a tumor pressed against her brainstem. I had spent 2 months mapping every vessel and nerve around it. I could no longer enter the operating room, but I could make sure the team received everything I knew. I transferred the case to Dr. Claire Bennett and reviewed the plan with her until neither of us had another question. On the morning of the surgery, I sat in the rehabilitation ward and watched the clock from 8 until 4. Claire finally walked in, removed her mask, and nodded. The resection went well. Neuromonitoring stayed stable. The tension left my shoulders so suddenly I almost collapsed. Molly's mother held my left hand and thanked me over and over. The first thing she asked after waking up was why Dr. Shaw had not come to see her, she said. "She told me that when she can walk, she is bringing you a butterscotch candy." I laughed, and tears ran down my face. I had not lost every way to save someone. I would simply have to find another one. Before I left the hospital, I submitted my resignation. Adrian entered the rehabilitation room carrying the letter. "You are really going to Heidelberg?" "Yes. You need familiar physicians and a support system right now. You have no family there. How are you supposed to manage?" The irony was almost unbearable. For years, he had complained that I never depended on him. Now that I was injured, all he could imagine was arranging the life he thought was safest for me. "I don't want you to choose a life where I cannot fail," I said. "I need to learn who I can become if I never return to my old operating room." He crushed the resignation letter in his fist. "I can come with you." "No. I want to make this right." "You can't." I lifted my stiff right hand. "Grant will answer for the attack. Natalie will answer for hiding threats and exposing my work information. You will answer for the call you did not take and every choice after it. And I will be responsible for rebuilding myself." He stood there for a long time. "Do you hate me for not answering?" "I do not want your explanation yet." Whatever the reason was, it would not change what had happened. On the day I left, Natalie waited outside the airport. She held one of our childhood candies. She looked exhausted, as if she had not slept in weeks. "Grant is being held without bail," she said. "I will testify." "Evelyn, I swear I did not know he would come after you." "Grant chose violence. The responsibility for that belongs to him." Relief flickered across her face. I continued before she could mistake my meaning. "But you knew he was looking for us. The advocate warned you to protect your location, and you told me nothing." Her face went white. Police had recovered dozens of screenshots from Grant's phone. Natalie had posted photographs of the coffee Adrian bought her, showing the hospital logo, her employee badge, and a scheduling board in the background. The safety counselor had told her to turn off location tagging and hide her workplace. She kept posting because she wanted the world to see that her new life was glamorous and secure. Grant learned which nights I worked and which parking structure I used. "I am not blaming you for being abused," I said. "I am blaming you for exposing other people's private information after you knew the danger had not ended, and for choosing not to warn me." Tears slid down her face. "What am I supposed to do now? I have nothing left." In the past, those words would have made me promise that she still had me. This time, I lifted the handle of my suitcase. "Start taking responsibility for your own choices." Before security, I looked back once. Adrian stood at the far end of the terminal. He did not come closer. We held each other's gaze across the distance until the boarding announcement began. Then I turned away. Real goodbyes do not always need a fight. No one has to win. Sometimes they begin the moment you stop walking back. Heidelberg was colder than I expected. For the first 3 months, every day became an argument with my right hand. I could not hold a mug without concentrating. Buttons defeated me. My therapist placed small wooden beads on a table and asked me to move them one by one into a box. After a dozen attempts, they still slipped through my fingers. One afternoon, I swept the entire box onto the floor. "Enough." My voice shook. "I cannot do this." It was the first time since the attack that I completely lost control in front of another person. Professor Weber did not tell me I would definitely recover. She did not promise that everything would return to normal. She crouched and began picking up the beads. "When you were learning surgery, did you quit because you could not isolate a vessel on your first attempt? This is different." "How?" "I may never return to what I was." She looked up at me. "Then stop trying to return. Go somewhere the old Evelyn never reached." She placed a project file on the table. Her team was improving a pediatric neurosurgical navigation platform. The core system had already undergone years of laboratory validation and early safety testing. It had ethics approval for a limited clinical trial, but one major problem remained. After the skull is opened, brain tissue shifts because of pressure, breathing, blood flow, and surgical retraction. A path that appears safe on preoperative imaging may no longer be accurate during the procedure. 3 months earlier, I had suggested a dynamic prediction model, then left only half a page of notes because I had been in a hurry to return to Boston. "Your right hand cannot operate right now," Anya said. "Your judgment, experience, and brain are still here. You are not a pair of hands, Evelyn." That night, for the first time, I stopped staring at my scar. I opened my laptop and returned to the half-written proposal. For the next 6 months, I spent my days in rehabilitation and my nights checking data with engineers. I did not independently treat German patients or act as a surgeon. I worked as a clinical researcher and advisor, reviewing cases, designing models, and participating in approved trial discussions. The first simulation failed. So did the second. On test 67, the system still drifted near the language cortex. A colleague told me to go home. Instead, I pulled up every data set again. At 3 in the morning, I saw the problem. We had treated tissue shift as a single error. We had ignored the fact that breathing, perfusion, and retraction made the displacement continue to change. I proposed a real-time predictive module. The lead engineer stared at the equations. This could force us to rebuild the entire system. Then we rebuilt it. My hand improved slowly too. I learned to eat without help. I completed basic sutures on a training pad. I could turn a control knob for short periods. In wet weather, Nerve pain still climbed from my wrist to my elbow until my fingers shook. My physician warned me that some of it might last for the rest of my life. I stopped asking whether I would ever become exactly who I had been. Some injuries do not disappear. They do not have to decide where you go next. Grant's trial began 8 months after I moved to Germany. My attorney sent me a summary. Natalie testified about years of control and assault and turned over every threatening message. The jury convicted Grant of aggravated assault, stalking, and violating a protection order. The photographs Natalie posted did not reduce his responsibility. He had chosen violence. The crime was his. At the same time, Northbridge's compliance office contacted me for records related to Natalie's first medication near miss. That was how I learned there had been another incident after I left. This time, the charge nurse filed the required report. Natalie, terrified that the nursing board would suspend her, begged Adrian to help. He changed timestamps in the electronic chart and persuaded a young physician to document the patient's symptoms as an ordinary medication reaction. During a routine quality audit, the barcode scans, surveillance footage, and chart entry times did not match. Computer logs did not care what anyone's last name was. Northbridge opened an independent investigation. Richard Cole disclosed his conflict as Adrian's father and board chairman and withdrew from every vote. He did not defend his son. In writing, he supported the temporary suspension of Adrian's management authority and high-risk operating privileges pending review by the state medical board. Natalie was terminated. Her nursing license entered disciplinary review. She was eventually required to complete ethics education and a supervised practice period before she could apply for another clinical position. Adrian lost his project leadership role, had his high-risk surgical privileges suspended for 6 months, and entered external supervision and compliance training. I learned all of that from formal reports, not gossip. At the end of the investigation file, Richard included one sentence for the committee. My son is not being disciplined because he loved the wrong person. He is being disciplined because he knew the rules existed and chose to conceal an error anyway. I felt neither satisfaction nor grief. Only distance. The young man beneath the oak tree had once told me we shared the same ideals. In the end, his need to feel indispensable had turned him into someone who hid danger for the person who depended on him. Anya noticed me staring at the report. Do you need the afternoon off? No. I closed the email and reopened the simulation results. There is still one drift pattern we have not solved. Their consequences belong to them. My life could not continue orbiting their mistakes. 14 months after I joined the project, the dynamic prediction module received approval for a small clinical trial. It was not a miracle technology invented overnight. The main platform had already been tested for years. Our module changed one crucial part. Every patient went through ethics review, independent assessment, and detailed informed consent. The first participant was a 10-year-old boy whose tumor lay near the language cortex. I did not operate. I built the preoperative model, managed the real-time navigation data, and provided clinical decision support. 3 hours into the surgery, the imaging showed tissue displacement beyond the safety threshold. The original route was no longer reliable. Everyone in the control room watched the screens. I worked the keyboard with my left hand while my right rested in a support brace. I entered the monitoring data again. The dynamic model produced an alternate path. The surgeon paused. Are you certain? The error range is within the approved threshold, I said. Withdraw 2 millimeters on the right and use the secondary corridor. 6 hours after the procedure began, the tumor was removed. When the boy woke, his first question was when he could have ice cream. The entire team laughed. I stood behind the glass and looked at my right hand. It had not held the scalpel. I had still helped save a child. That evening, Anya opened a bottle of champagne. Do you still think you are only a surgeon who lost her hand? I looked at the postoperative scan. No. Another year passed. After enough safety data accumulated, the program began preparing for an international multi-center pilot. 7 hospitals in Asia and North America applied. Northbridge University Medical Center was one of them. I disclosed the conflict immediately. I had worked there, had personal relationships with members of the candidate team, and had been interviewed in connection with a safety investigation. The ethics committee allowed me to explain clinical and technical requirements, but prohibited me from voting on Northbridge's selection. 3 independent experts would score the site. Anya asked, "Are you worried they will think you are avoiding responsibility?" Avoiding personal influence is part of the responsibility. The day the evaluation notice went out, Adrian called 17 times. I did not answer. The next morning, he flew to Heidelberg. When I left the research building, he was waiting at the bottom of the steps. He looked thinner. His badge carried no leadership title. "Evelyn, I need 5 minutes." I checked my watch. "Starting now." His face tightened. "Natalie and I are over. That is between you and Natalie." I accepted the hospital's discipline. My high-risk privileges have been restored, but I am still under supervision. That is between you and the hospital. He clenched his hands. And the phone call. Pain stirred beneath my scar. "I was awake," he said. "I saw your name." Natalie had received another threat from Grant and was crying. "I assumed you were calling about work or asking me to collect something from the apartment. She said we were already over and that answering would give you hope. So I turned the phone face down. I planned to call after she calmed down. 12 minutes later, the hospital told me you were in the emergency department." For a long moment, I could not speak. He had not missed the call. He had chosen not to answer. Adrian's eyes filled. "I think about it every day. If I had answered, maybe your hand would not be like this." "Even if you had answered, you might not have reached me in time," I said. "Grant hurt me. I will not transfer his crime to you." Hope flashed across Adrian's face. I continued. "But you spent years telling me I never needed you. That was the first time I called you because I was terrified. And it was the last." His face went white. I checked my watch again. "Your 5 minutes are over." I walked past him without turning around. 2 years after leaving Boston, I returned as one of the clinical research leads for the pilot program. Rain fell outside Logan Airport. After holding my umbrella for several minutes, my right hand began to go numb. A colleague took it from me without comment. I did not insist that I could manage. During those 2 years, I had learned that accepting help was not the same as surrendering independence. A healthy relationship was not built on one person being unable to survive without the other. It was built on 2 people who could stand on their own and still chose to reach for each other when necessary. Northbridge's evaluation was scheduled for Monday. Before entering the conference room, I confirmed that my conflict disclosure was included in every packet. I would present the technical requirements and patient safety standards, then leave before the final vote. Adrian sat at the far end of the table. His badge read "Only Attending Physician." Richard Cole did not chair the meeting. An independent medical director did. I opened the evaluation file. Northbridge meets the pilot's requirements for case volume, equipment, and baseline training. Several people relaxed. I turned the page. However, within the last 3 years, the institution documented 2 irregular nursing records, 1 instance of management interference with a clinical chart, and 1 near miss that was not reported on time. "Those matters were investigated and disciplined," the medical director said. "We will verify whether the response changed the system," I replied, "not merely whether several individuals were punished." I looked around the table. This navigation platform may bring prestige, but it exists to protect patients. Anyone who uses relationships to conceal error cannot serve on the core team. Then I left the room. The 3 independent experts placed Northbridge on a 3-month remediation review. The hospital had to establish a stronger anonymous reporting channel, expand electronic record auditing, and recertify every pilot team member. It was not rejection. It was not favoritism. The same standard applied to every applicant. After the decision became public, Natalie stopped me outside an open project briefing. She no longer worked at Northbridge. She had completed the courses required by the nursing board, but had not yet secured another hospital position. "So you did come back to punish us," she said. People in the corridor slowed to listen. Her voice trembled. "Adrian has already been disciplined. I lost my job. You are an international expert now. Why can't you leave us alone? 2 years earlier, I would have shouted. Now I only felt tired. I did not vote on Northbridge's selection. I disclosed my relationship with the hospital and Adrian and left the room before the decision. The evidence came from independent audits. The experts have never met you. Not every consequence is my revenge, Natalie. Most consequences are simply what follows the choices you made. Her mouth opened, then closed. You have always been better than me, she said suddenly. School, work, the way people respect you. Even getting hurt somehow made you more important. Being attacked did not make me lucky. I held her gaze. I just refused to let it control the rest of my life. She said nothing else. I walked back to my team. 3 months later, Northbridge passed the remediation review and entered the international pilot. Northbridge's first pilot patient was a 9-year-old boy with a tumor against the brain stem. His case resembled Molly's, though the two children were not related. The lead surgeon was Dr. Lena Morales, a younger neurosurgeon whose name carried less weight than Adrian's. Several administrators suggested Adrian should operate now that his high-risk privileges had been restored. I did not select a surgeon by reputation. I compared the simulation data for every candidate. Lena had the highest stability score and the best completion rate for emergency alternate routes. After reviewing the numbers, Adrian said only, I can serve as second assistant. 5 hours into the operation, the navigation probe began to drift. If we could not recalibrate within 10 minutes, continuing might injure the brain stem. Sweat covered the engineer's forehead. Lena's instrument hand stiffened. The old Evelyn would have rushed forward and tried to solve every problem herself. Instead, I stood at the control station and gave orders. Stop retraction. Hold the field. Adrian, verify the third neuromonitoring set. Lena, withdraw 2 millimeters along the backup corridor. Do not chase the image. I operated the keyboard with my left hand and slowly adjusted a control dial with my right. Pain shot from my wrist to my forearm. I did not let go. 3 minutes later, the alternate localization locked into place. When the last piece of tumor was removed, neuromonitoring remained stable. No one cheered. Everyone simply released the breath they had been holding. Outside the control room, I leaned against the wall. My right hand shook so badly I could not lift it. Adrian offered me a cup of warm water. Thank you, I said, and accepted it. He looked surprised, then stepped back. Of course. He did not use the moment to discuss our past. He did not follow me. It was the first time he truly respected a boundary I had set. The boy woke and correctly said his name. After the hospital posted the successful outcome, Molly and her mother contacted me. Several days later, 9-year-old Molly walked into my office. She was taller than I remembered, and her hair had grown back. Dr. Shaw, I heard you came home. She opened her palm. A butterscotch candy rested there. Mom said you used to like these. I stared at it and remembered the candy Natalie had once left on the corner of my desk. For years, I thought that if I rejected one familiar sweetness, I could reject every memory attached to it. But the candy had never betrayed me. I took it, unwrapped it, and let the taste dissolve slowly. Thank you. Molly smiled. I should be thanking you. Dr. Bennett said half of my operation was yours. In that moment, I reclaimed my own past from the people who had hurt me. After the pilot procedure, Northbridge and the Heidelberg team agreed to create a pediatric surgical innovation center. Richard Cole asked me to become its clinical research director. The resources were excellent, but I did not accept immediately. The center must be governed by an independent committee, I said. Staff selection, case review, and safety reporting must be transparent. No board member, donor, or relative can bypass the process. It also needs an anonymous reporting system. Anyone can make a mistake. No one can hide one. Richard was quiet for a moment. Those are not conditions you are imposing on Northbridge, he said. They are reforms Northbridge should have made already. The night before I signed the agreement, Natalie found me in the parking garage. This time, she was not crying. I'm leaving Boston, she said. She had found a supervised position at a small rehabilitation facility. Under the nursing board's restrictions, she could begin working again. Adrian and I ended things, she continued. He said he was not in love with me. He was in love with being needed. I offered no response. Adrian, understanding himself, did not erase what he had done. Natalie looked at the floor and gave a small, bitter laugh. I was always jealous of you. You were smarter. Teachers trusted you. Patients needed you. Even when Grant hurt me, you were the one who drove 1,000 miles to save me. Everyone said I was lucky to have a friend like you. Standing beside you, I always looked like the helpless one. She raised her eyes. Tears slowly gathered there. When Adrian looked at me, I felt like I had finally beaten you at something. I understood then that she had not only wanted Adrian. She had wanted to take someone from me and prove that she was no longer the failed woman I had rescued. You were not drunk that first night, were you? Her face went blank. After a long pause, she shook her head. He had been drinking. I had not. I knew he was angry that you were in Germany. I knew he liked being depended on. I showed him Grant's threats on purpose. I let myself fall apart in front of him. But he was the one who held me. I know. Betrayal is rarely completed by only one person. Natalie had calculated. Adrian had chosen. Evelyn, she whispered, could we ever start again? No. I did not let her finish. I did not rescue you so you would owe me forever. You were allowed to leave me, disagree with me, and build a life without me. But you knew Adrian was my partner, and you used taking him as proof that you could defeat me. That cannot be erased by an apology. Do you hate me? I did. I looked toward the sunlight at the end of the garage. Not anymore. Hatred requires you to keep turning back. I am finished turning back. She remained where she was. Later, I heard that she moved to Maine and started again at a rehabilitation center, taking basic rotating shifts. No Adrian. No Evelyn arranging the next step. For the first time, her life belonged entirely to her. The night before the Innovation Center opened, I returned to the hospital roof. Boston's lights spread below me. The service door still moved slightly whenever the wind caught it. Adrian stood near the railing. I thought you would never come back here. I would not have before, I said, closing the folder in my hands. Now it is only a roof. He smiled sadly and placed an old repaired phone on the bench. It was the phone shattered during the attack. After police finished with it, my attorney had transferred it to Adrian for safekeeping. The data was recovered, he said. There are photographs you took for me in Germany. Old messages, too. I did not open them. Delete everything. His hand stopped. Evelyn, I know I have no right to ask you to come back. But I have spent years trying to understand how we became this. Because you did not love all of me, I said. You loved the Evelyn who challenged you, but you also needed her to become fragile sometimes so you could feel irreplaceable. When I did not perform weakness for you, you decided I did not love you. You were not seeking love. You were seeking proof of your value inside my dependence. He was silent for a long time. You're right. And now? Now I understand that someone can solve her own problems and still love me. Not asking for help does not make me worthless. He looked toward the city. I learned it too late. The wind carried the words away. I looked at the man who had once occupied every corner of my romantic life. The pain I expected was gone. Only a distant sadness remained. Adrian, I will never pretend we did not love each other. But loving someone once does not mean every betrayal must be forgiven. It does not mean we have to return to each other. You can keep changing. You may become a physician people can trust again. I simply will not be beside you on that road. He closed his eyes and nodded. When I turned to leave, he did not reach for me. The door closed behind me. This time, the wind did not close it. I did dot on the day the Pediatric Surgical Innovation Center officially opened. A new name appeared on the glass door. Evelyn Shaw, Clinical Research Director. I stood in front of it for a long time. A deep scar still crossed my right wrist. Rain made it ache. Long periods at a control station caused my fingers to tremble. I had not returned to the person I was before the attack. I no longer needed to. Our team included young physicians, engineers, rehabilitation specialists, and people who had once been kept outside major projects because they lacked the right title or family connection. The center's first rule was simple: anyone could make a mistake, but no one could hide one. The second rule was equally important: No one had to carry everything alone. After the opening meeting, my assistant gave me an unsigned envelope. Inside was a receipt for a recurring donation to an emergency domestic violence fund. The money would support temporary housing, legal aid, replacement devices, and digital privacy protection. The donor was Natalie. The amount was modest, but the payments were scheduled to continue for years. I did not contact her. Real change did not need my forgiveness as proof. I placed the compensation from Grant's criminal case into the same program. Years earlier, Adrian and I had driven 1,000 miles to rescue one person with little more than courage and urgency. Later, I understood that helping someone escape violence required more than pulling her through a doorway. It required protection orders, housing, work, legal assistance, secure devices, and a safety plan that made it harder for an abuser to find her. Most of all, the survivor had to learn, slowly, that her future could belong to her. That afternoon, I visited the 9-year-old pilot patient. He was already walking beside the bed with support. When he saw me, he raised one hand excitedly. "Dr. Shaw, I want to be a doctor too." "Why?" "Because doctors save people." I smiled and adjusted his foreline. "Then your first job is to grow up strong." As I left the room, the light above the surgical wing came on. Lena leaned out of the changing area. "Evelyn, we need you for the next preoperative review." "Coming." I started walking faster. The files in my arms pressed against my right wrist until it began to ache. A colleague beside me took half the stack. I let her. We walked toward the conference room together. I once believed strength meant never needing anyone and never giving anyone the chance to hurt me. Now I knew better. Real strength was surviving what hurt you and still daring to trust good systems, trustworthy people, and your own right to be treated with care. The glass door closed behind us and reflected a face that was calm, clear, and unmistakably mine. I did not look back. My life was finally beginning.